Morning, everybody. Welcome to, I think, the third roasting we've got. We're very lucky today to have Claire from Snap, who is the VP of EMEA. For those who don't know me, so I'm John Barham. I'm the MD of Roast. We are a performance marketing agency specialising in all things paid media, so paid search, paid social, display, mobile, SEO and content, and also CRM and analytics as well. So that's me, but I'll hand over now to Claire, who will introduce herself, give a bit of a background as to her role at Snap.
Thank you very much, John, for the introduction and for having me. Yes, I'm Claire Velotti. I am the VP of EMEA at Snap, or Snapchat for most of you who will kind of use, if you do use the app. What does that mean? I always kind of bring it back to layman's terms. It ultimately means I'm responsible for our business across Europe and the Middle East, and responsible in the sense, for driving our revenue and building our partnerships, but equally really representing Snap in the regions, really important to us, and making sure that our partners, and I mean partners, not just advertising partners, but whether it's policymakers, our community really understands Snap's position and why we believe we are a slightly different platform that I think really does enrich society. And I've been at Snap, I should probably say, for 5.5 years, so feel like quite a veteran.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, well, before we get into the questions with Claire, just a bit of housekeeping. So we usually, these will run about 20-25 minutes. There's a Q&A function, hopefully in all of your chats, which we'll pick those up at the end. So if you've got questions with Claire or I during the session, please just type them in there and we'll try and answer some at the end. Okay, so Claire, thanks for the intro. So I suppose the question really is Snap, we've got a fair few clients using Snap, but it's not, always a default on a media plan or an advertising plan. So I suppose, what is Snap, and why is it of interest to advertisers?
Yeah, I should say I spent 11 years of my career in a media agency doing a lot of performance marketing, although I have to admit it was far simpler back in the day where we just about had third-party ad serving. So I'm not going to claim to be an expert in terms of the detail that one has to go into these days. But in terms of Snap, I think I've always talked about that from the offset. I do think there is a gap between perception and reality. And I think the challenge is more than ever as well. It's compounded by the fact I know, having been in an agency or in a client environment, there is so much choice now. Things are so fragmented that sometimes it is easy to focus on what you know. And it could be as simple as know as a consumer yourself. And so today I thought it was useful, if it's all right, John, to sort of go back and give you a slight history lesson on Snap.
That'd be great, yeah.
I think understanding that, you understand why it's slightly different, and actually why I would argue it's pretty important to be thinking about that in terms of your media plan and thinking about Snap being part of it for the obvious audience and goals. So if you go back, Snap is nearly 10 years old. It was founded by Bobby Murphy and Evan Spiegel while they were at college, like most of these US tech companies are founded. It sounds so easy, but clearly not. And they felt really adamant. If you think about 10 years ago, the likes of Facebook was around and social media was really getting traction and scaling fast. And what they felt was they really wanted to create something that they kind of argued was sort of an antidote to social media. And to be clear, it's not a criticism. I worked at Facebook and Instagram. They're extraordinary businesses and platforms, and I still use them. But they are fundamentally, they are different. And why it's different is why we didn't want to be in a social media environment was we felt it was starting to become obvious. People sort of were curating this version of themselves and it was becoming quite pressurized. And what they felt, it was really, they wanted to create a platform that was really a simple way, or not even simple, the fastest way to communicate. And we use the word real friends, to communicate with the people that are genuinely your real friends. And the reason why I say real friends, the analogy I use, I have friends on Facebook that I am clearly a very nosy person and like to sort of see what they're up to. But if I saw them walking down the street, I might not stop to have a chat. And that's okay, because it's just more about I'm interested in their lives, but maybe I'm not in their lives. Whereas on Snap, you wouldn't have that. The people that you are friends with are people that genuinely are in your friendship group. And so what they did from the offset, created a platform where it was actually quite hard you can't find people on Snap. At the time, there were no obvious public profiles. We have introduced public profiles, but in a very different way to other platforms. You tend to have to know someone to be friends with them. We have no public metrics. There's no vanity metrics, no likes, no comments. So it's quite a different ecosystem to start with. And so what we realized was then the importance of the camera, because what we learned about our community, and it has continued to progress, that 150% of Snapchatters are more likely to communicate with pictures over words. And the reason for it, if you are going to be the fastest way to communicate, actually the camera is the enabler. And that's why Snap's actually quite a lot. When I joined Snap 5.5 years ago, my poor mother was like, I don't know how to use it. And you obviously will hear that, because it invites you to create it. You open up to a camera that says, do something. We're used to being met with a sort of news feed, a scrolling with content. We're very different. So you open to the camera, and the idea is that if you want to share an experience with your friends, you've got the camera and you just literally snap it and then you share it, and it's very fast. So that was the premise of Snap from the offset. The only other thing I will add is that then we took to a very different approach to even things like, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but things like content. We didn't want to create a social media news feed where, because John, you may look at, I don't know, I'm going to make a really big generalization about you. You're looking at football content. Just because we're friends, I don't want to see football content because I absolutely have no interest, but I may see it because we're friends. So in the Snap environment, that doesn't happen. And that really is the premise of social media, where it's you get influenced with content that your friends like. In Snap, that is not the case. While content is all around, we've done partnerships with well-known organizations, whether it's, you know, news organization, general media, entertainment, sport, where there are brands on the stories page that it's not influenced by popular culture. It's influenced basically by what you choose to look at. And there is no algorithm serving you up because other people look at stuff. So it's quite a different environment. And that was very, very important to us to do that from the offset. Should I give some stats just to sort of...
Yeah, go on. Absolutely, it'd be great. Thank you.
So we now have 500 million monthly active users. Actually, in the beginning, we only talked about daily active users because ultimately we are a communication platform, and that was really the premise. So we have 280 daily active users. This is some UK stats, but they kind of quite, these stats are really relevant to all our core markets. 90% are 13 to 24-year-olds, 75% are 13 to 34-year-olds. So it gives you a steer of, and actually it's quite a different audience, because if you look at unduplicated, which is a question we get asked a lot by clients, comparing to some of the competition that you may compare us to, if you wanted to reach, for instance, we have 63 this is looking at daily active users, 63.6% of our users are unique that you wouldn't be able to reach on TikTok. And the reason why I use TikTok, because it's an obvious one. Or Facebook, 56% of our audience you could not reach on Facebook. And this is daily active users. So it just gives you a steer of the fact it is quite a different community and a different type of usage that happens on the platform.
Perfect. I think that's definitely a challenge we get asked by clients pretty frequently is, where's the incremental audience? Yeah, by nature, they will saturated search or saturated, Facebook and Insta. Where's everyone else hiding? So those are great stats, thank you. I suppose the interesting thing about Snap is you guys do refer to yourselves as a camera company. As an agency side, we will quite rudimentary divvy things up into a display partner, a search partner, a social partner. Whereas you start looking at how Snap operates, it's very much a different entity. And that sort of leads us on into sort of, what you guys are doing at the moment. Because I know you're focusing a lot on augmented reality, and that's kind of, that's a bit of the roadmap, is delving into there. So what's next for Snap in the next 6-12 months in terms of platform changes, and what all exciting stuff are you doing?
I purposely didn't refer to us as a camera company because I sometimes do get the eyes being rolled. You didn't do that, John. You said it in a convincing way. And actually, in the early days, people would go, "What do you mean you're a camera company?" I think the first thing to explain, just because you buy us like you buy a social platform, i.e. you go to an ad manager tool and it's the same. And the reason why we did that is that we wanted to make it easy to access from a client point of view, to access Snap. But just because you buy it in the same way, the point is the platform is different. And we do refer to ourselves as a camera company. So thank you for doing your homework. And that's because it's what I started with, was that we are a communication company. And to be the fastest way to communicate, you are using the camera. The camera is the enabler. And you also touched on AR. So AR really is a massive part of all our innovation. And again, the reason why in the early days, AR, if I'm being really candid, a bit like a lot of technology, was used as a way to sort of invite people or take the barrier off with creating content. Because actually sometimes people are like, well, what am I going to do? And actually the AR, for those of you who don't use Snap, but you'll know AR in the sense of, obviously you know what augmented reality is, but actually some of you might think about it as the funny things you're putting on your faces. And that was the early days. It was a bit of a gamification to sort of make, you know, as entertainment. So if I was sending you a snap, John, but I wasn't doing anything exciting, particularly during lockdown, and I'm stuck for ideas, I might just send you a silly face, which is just sort of to make you laugh and make us sort of have a moment. But what we started to learn about our community was the power of augmented reality. Because yes, it started off as something quite fun, but we started to realize, and this is very much where we're going in terms of our sort of vision of how the world is playing out, and it is literally playing out in front of our eyes right now, is that this notion of computing being layered over the world. And that sounds all very fluffy and buzzwords, but the reality is, if you think about it and where our AR experiences come from, it's gone from pure entertainment to actually utility. And great examples, a lot of partners we work with are letting, we call it AR trial. We recently did our Snap Partner Summit, which is essentially a bit like a developer conference where we announced a lot of our launches. But we're in a world now, and we did it with various campaigns recently, some actually interesting luxury brands. And you might think, who's going to buy an $800 pair of, or pounds pair of trainers? So I don't mean to talk American jargonism, but trainers, it's to be British, for £800 through the camera, through the Snap camera, but they do. And what we did was, and what we mean by AR try on, is that you can literally try on a pair of trainers on your feet through your camera, and it feels real, to the point that my best friend is no techie, but she is on Snap, and she's partly on Snap for me, bless her. But she saw it and went, whoa, you've just bought a pair of Gucci trainers. And I said, yes, I know I have a little bit of a shopping obsession, but I didn't actually buy these ones yet. And it's so real. And I encourage anyone listening today, honestly, try it. It's extraordinary how the quality of it and where we've got to, and what we've been releasing in our Snap Partner Summit, is that you could actually try on a whole outfit and change the color of it. It's interactive to the point that it's so moved on from the face. We've got one with a watch, and you can see actually for anyone who's in retail where that's heading. And I think what we predict is, from a kind of more client point of view, is this world of physical and digital are colliding big time. And we think the camera is going to be at the heart of that connection. And we are seeing it particularly in worlds like retail.
I would say, yeah, it's been massive, I suppose in the last 12, 15 months, there's been a massive spike of companies who may be doing virtual shop assistants for similar reasons, but they still need the tech to actually show what a hat, handbag, trainers will look like. So yeah.
And to give a little clue, I can't really talk a lot about it, but we recently acquired a company in Berlin called Fit Analytics, which is those companies where essentially you can put measurements in and they recommend sizes. So you can see where we're heading, which I think I actually think in the same way we revolutionized mobile advertising, we created vertical video. So you might not realize that, but the whole premise of a video on mobile being vertical, it wasn't before then, which is bizarre now thinking about it. I think we are going to revolutionize e-com. I think e-com, in the world of just keep showing enough ads, or just even dynamic ads and so on, which we have on our platform, I think e-com is going to completely change, and I think we're at the heart of it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, anecdote, yeah, I hate shopping. I think anecdotally, people have been forced to shop differently in the last year, so anything that can facilitate that, but also make it a sort of standardized experience to do it online but sort of virtually will help massively. What I was going to say in terms of have you guys seen, I mean, in the last year, have you guys seen a massive uptake of, you know, people brands and developers using the functionality, using the lens and the sort of workspace capabilities to build or try their own routes to augmented reality, that they could, you know, then, you know, increase their, I suppose, yeah, their functionality for users?
Yeah, it's a conversation. So we have started to have with a lot of big partners. Actually, the one I can announce that there's actually in this summit, which was literally a few weeks ago. So it's great timing talking about new stuff. We did a partnership with Disney Parks, actually Disney World, and where you could start in the park experience, really use augmented reality. So the example is you can take pictures of yourself while you're in the park. And then actually, when you put your camera to the magical kingdom or the castle in Disney World, you can see everyone's photos being overlaid on the castle. It's pretty incredible. And we're definitely having more of those conversations, which aren't really advertising conversations. They are like, this is groundbreaking technology. How do we integrate it into our businesses? We're also trying to, as well as have that broader conversation, make it easier for advertisers. So we've even created the studio where you can partner with just lens creators who make really cool lenses and actually think about partnering with them to create stuff. We've really tried to take the barrier of creation out. It's actually not as difficult as one may think. Back in the day it was, and we used to do all the heavy lifting. We created a platform called Lens Studio, which actually makes it quite easy for people to create augmented reality. I think the key thing as well, which is important, is the behavior is there. And I think that's one thing I would say which makes us unique. This is probably my only sales pitch, I promise, is that platforms may try and adopt augmented reality, but the behavior has to be integrated into your platform. You know, we have 5 billion snaps happening every day on our platform. That's more than all the kind of cameras in all the mobile phones in the world. So I think for us, we are definitely have an advantage of being ahead because it's happening at such scale. We know what people want to use the camera for and how they use augmented reality.
Perfect. So my next question is, personally, I would say Snap's pretty, from a lot of advertisers, the fashions, the retails, yes, it makes sense, but there might be elements of reticence for some slight, less demographically aligned advertisers, let's say. So I suppose the question really is, it sounds like there's multiple routes for brands to engage with Snap. So obviously they can do their media, but they can also do actual functionality elements as well. When you've got new brands onto the platform in one way or another, what's been the sort of best route for them to dip their toe and start thinking about it as a big opportunity rather than just a bit more of CPC bidding?
Yeah, this is probably where I come into my agency speak. It all depends on what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. And so that clearly can really vary. There are brands that may enter through AR, but actually I would argue most brands will enter through more kind of formats that they are using maybe in other platforms. So whether it could be a simple kind of, we call it a snap ad, but essentially it's, a video type ad, a vertical video sound on 3-second ad, ad, or it could be more of a kind of dynamic ads that you are more keen to in the kind of traditional performance marketing. There are things like, I don't want to kind of go into the jargon because I'll be here all day, but story ads. There's always kind of different types of formats, simple formats that and you go into an ad manager tool and you buy it like you'd buy other platforms. And we've really tried to make that pretty straightforward. No surprise, it does work pretty well. If you have got the right objectives, you're targeting the right person. Creativity is really important on our platform, actually. Creative has to be the right creative, and I say that because we are a very creative platform. If you go on to see the ads, it's not like a format within a scrolling feed. They stand out. So the impact of creativity can really make or break your ads. And we have a massive creative strategy team that work with partners to help work out what does that look like. I would challenge you a little bit on audience. Clearly there are some clients that might say, oh, Snap's too young. I think it's then that debate of actually, we really do believe clearly our audience continue to age up, but more importantly, a lot of our audience are shaping what the future is going to look like. So it's a question of, do you want to go on that journey now and get ahead and learn? I'm not going to lie, there are certain brands that don't advertise on our platform because maybe they are really going for a particularly very more mature audience and Snap doesn't feel so relevant, and that's not up for debate. I get that, and I'm not going to say it's perfect for everyone, but I would argue that every vertical works with us, and it could be certain brand in that vertical that doesn't work with us in a particular advertiser. But we have from retail, e-com, huge, like obvious. The CPG is obvious, but if I think about more performance, We're very big in fintech. No surprise, it's a booming industry, so fintech's pretty big. I know you work with some gambling organisations. We do a lot with them. What else? We've even got like a lot. I mean, I know it's econ, but more kind of left field, which are growing industries actually. Things like teeth whitening, Invisalign, like a lot of those type of brands who are hardcore performance advertisers. And I think one sector I always reference in performance marketing, because if you can't deliver, they just turn off, which is gaming. Gaming is one of our biggest verticals, and actually I think has made us more sophisticated in performance advertising. And I think that's the point I'd land, is that if you can't work for a gaming client, then you can't do performance, full stop. And so that's why I think gaming's a sector I often celebrate, because I think they are ahead in sophistication. So I would, and a lot of those advertisers, if I look at Starling, they would even actually, Dr. Smile, who's clearly teeth whitening, will go from an AR, they might actually use AR, but they will also do a lot of traditional performance marketing activity.
Okay, perfect. And then sort of final few questions really. I suppose the last year's changed a lot for everyone. I keep saying the last year, it's longer than a year now. The last year's changed a lot for everyone. Have you seen a real shift in usage of the platform by consumers or advertisers and how they're behaving on the platform?
Yeah. If I start with usage, I get when I've been doing some sort of press interviews, I get really frustrated where you go, oh, COVID must have been great for Snap, your users are up, blah, blah, blah. And actually, yes, of course, people want to communicate with their real friends, and community's been very active. Things like video calling really grew over the kind of hard lockdown periods, where like 50% increase in video calling. But the truth is, I just see it with my own Snap usage. If you are not out and about, I've got less to snap. No one wants to see my four walls. And yes, I use augmented reality to make some fun snaps, but there's only so many I do if I'm not out doing things. So we're actually really optimistic that we've done really well in terms of our community being highly engaged during COVID. But actually, I'm pretty optimistic now everyone's allowed to go out and about and actually do things, that actually Snap comes to life when you are with your friends and you are living in the world and doing cool stuff. So I think we will continue to see that growth increase. But we were really, I suppose, privileged to be able to play a really important role during lockdown, enabling people to communicate, because I think, particularly for the younger audience, we know they've had some real challenges, and to be part of that has been really important. In terms of advertisers, let's be honest, I'm a direct person, let's not kid ourselves, it's been tough for a lot of businesses. So I think hyper rational advertisers, which I would argue are performance marketers, have got more focused. It's become even more hyper rational, which is absolutely right. And so what we've really tried to do is really listen to what are those challenges and how are metrics shifting, and trying to support them. And I think that's really what we've seen, is people just being even more laser focused with every pound they spend, making sure it works that bit harder. And that's the responsibility we have to do that with them. So I think that's what I've seen. I think it's also another interesting piece, and I'm kind of trying to figure out, is it certain regions, certain countries? In the past, where, let's take Black Friday, is that moment, that day, or I know we've got Cyber Monday, but I think what we're going to see play out is moments aren't going to be days. I think they're going to last longer. We'll see. I work on obviously have the Middle East. We've just had Ramadan. The build up before Ramadan was as big as Ramadan, whereas in the past it'd be like, we'd know those days in Ramadan were massive. So I think that's an interesting insight, thinking about your marketing plans not just being so maybe short-lived for a particular moment, and actually a bit like entertainment and trailers. I kind of see that build up becoming actually an important part of strategy.
Perfect. Last question for me, less about the advertising, more about, it's a good opportunity to ask this for all the platforms. I mean, we as a business, I'm sure a lot of those attending, our clients and brands, we're at that tipping point of how are we going to all work as businesses in the post quasi-COVID world. How is Snap going about it? What are your sort of plans for teams back in the office, how to sort of get back to a semblance of normal as best you can?
You know, the first thing I keep saying, because my goodness, we have a lot of conversations on this, is we're trying to predict how people are going to feel. So we've sent loads of surveys out asking, how do people want to work? Do they want to come back to the office? The challenge is, until life goes back to real normality, we're sort of coming into it. I think it's hard to know what you really want as an individual. So making plans is actually quite hard. What we have realised, though, that there is some definite upside of working remotely in terms of home, is productivity in some cases, I think, can go up, because particularly for our world, where, well, if I just look at my sample size of me, where today I'm having a virtual market visit to the Middle East after this and having meetings with clients across the Middle East, I would have been in the Middle East and spent half of that week, or let's say a day at least, traveling. So there's definitely some upside, and we've seen that value. I think we've also realised that when you run a global organisation, that when, for instance, I was on a call last night with most people in the US, it democratises a global organisation, that I am equal to everybody else. Whereas before, it would be a load of people maybe in LA and New York and me dialing in. So I think it has really helped us think about shifting to being a global, working and operating as a global organisation. However, I think it's changing the role of the office. So we do think office environment's really important. If you really are going to collaborate, I think we forget about people starting out in the industry. Actually, we've been talking about, it's your first day in the office. If no one's there, that's a bit awkward. Like, how are you going to learn? How are you going to even get the shortcuts to how you use a system or a tool? I do think the office is really an important environment, but we really need to rethink it as more collaboration space, as opposed to everyone has a desk. I think that world's going to change. And so I think someone used the expression, which was a bit, I think, extreme, but someone in Canada said to me, think about it as being like a club, like a WeWork or a members club, where you go there to meet people and to collaborate and learn things and almost hang out. And I think we shouldn't also devalue the social interactions. You have trust with colleagues because you know things about them outside of their work life. I think that connection is actually critical, particularly when you make hard decisions. Trusting your colleagues is really key. I don't think you can do that through a VC. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. I think for me, it's not a case of thinking about the kids, but as you say, those of us who sort of a bit more set in our ways and know what we're doing, less of an issue. But as the juniors, how they're meant to build networks, how they're meant to build rapport and relationships, that's the key thing for us. Yeah. But again, we're doing a flexible model. Yeah. You can work from home. I think that's great. And I think you have to also remember, you don't want to create a hierarchical organisation, because I was thinking, someone was saying to me, well, you must know I've got some people that joined my team. And I was thinking, well, I don't really have meetings with them. So I've not even seen them. I don't even know who they are. Whereas in the old world of the office, I'd walk a floor and go, oh, hi, who are you? What do you do? And there'd be a connection. And I worry in a virtual world that you just have relationships with the people that you work with day to day, or who were still are sort of in your level, your hierarchy. Yeah. And I think that's very dangerous. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that was all the questions for me. I'm just having a look at some of the questions we've got from the audience. So one of the questions is, are there new demographics you're trying to bring to the platform, or is it more growing with your demographic? Or are there key segments of society that Snap feel they're missing? I was on a growth call. This is the call I was referring to last night, all about this topic. Very timely. Back in the day, we used to have this debate, oh, should we focus on an older audience? And what we realised quite quickly, actually, there was so much low-hanging fruit, and we had such highly engaged audience. Why force a new audience? That was the view in the early days. And I think one thing I'm really proud of at Snap, we've never had an aggressive sort of growth strategy to sort of use growth hacks to drive growth, because I mean, we used to use this stat, and it's very old stat, so please not to be quoted, because it's probably not that stat anymore. But we used to talk about, 60% of our audience would create content when they come in. That's incredibly high when you think of other platforms would be like probably less than 1% most people are consuming. So we've always been really mindful to keep that high engagement and actually not grow the social graph for a user too broadly, because then it devalues the point if you talk to your real friends. Anyway. So when we think about trying to go for a new audience, we've never really done that at all. And to date, we haven't got serious plans. What we are trying to do, though, is now look at country by country. Maybe is the opportunity, because we've really highly penetrated, let's say in the US, that 13 to 34. So the only way we can grow is aging up. So we've started that conversation, but we've never purposefully looked for that, because we've never had to be completely candid. We've grown really organically. Okay, perfect. Next question, how do you find out more about the recent summit and augmented clothing solutions mentioned earlier? So is there going to be, I suppose, a write-up, it's publicly available resource for the recent summits that you mentioned?
Yeah. There is, it's lots in the press, but I'm happy if that person wants to send you an email or send me an email, I'm happy to get you. I'm sure the link is still, I should know this really, so apologies I don't. I'm pretty confident I can get you the link and you can watch even the highlights, but I'd really encourage you, if you are in that space, to go watch it, because it's some phenomenal things coming.
Perfect. And then have you got any good examples of brands using AR outside of e-commerce? So I know you mentioned travel being one. Basically, you have to save the travel and retail industry by the sounds of things. Have you got any good examples of brands using AR beyond, in shop, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a really, we've had all sorts, like, I mean, name the sector, but I'm going to pick one that's really left field. And I know not necessarily, maybe there's brands listening who are from this sector, but it's just a good one because you would not think that. Auto. Example, you're launching a car, you can actually walk around the car, change the color of the car, go into the car, not you physically can't sit it, but you can go into the car, see the dashboard, experience the car. It's honestly, I mean, I'm sounding, actually, other examples, again, they are very brandy, so apologies, but I loved it. It was back in the day, Stranger Things, not that I'm into it, but it was one of our best AR experiences where you walked into the Stranger Things experience. It was honestly breathtaking how just how real it was. So I'm trying now, I always go blank of thinking of sectors. Where else? Fintech, Starling Bank did AR, but they did it in a more brandy way where it's complementary, they're above the line, their TV advertising. But there are, I mean, yeah, you can name it, like any sector has done AR. Some of it though has been more brandy. When you think about fintech, because that's going to be a bit harder right now. Gamers do a lot of AR because you can sort of start a game in AR, get someone hooked, and then get them into the game.
Okay, Claire, well, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. For those watching, we'll write up the conversation, share the video, and so keep an eye out for that email or on the Roast or TP Group blog. But Claire, thank you very much for your time. It was much appreciated. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your very sunny Wednesdays.
And thank you for having me and listening to me. And let's make sure my stats have given you a right, John, before you write them up.
Perfect. Will do. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.